All right, so yesterday I talked about the wound of the pleaser's cage, and I felt like I had, healed this one. But I also felt like what was pulling on my heartstring yesterday was a sense of belonging. And after I was done with the video, I, cooked supper for the kids and really wanted to search and look up what belonging actually means. And what I've come to discover is belonging isn't what we think it is. At least not for me anyway. And that is part of the healing process for anyone who wants to know if there's something that really pulls on your heartstring, if there's something that really triggers you, irritates you, it forms some sort of emotion in you that's uncomfortable. That is considered a trigger. And if you want to heal, if you want to continue growing, everyone has a choice. The point is to really dive into what triggered you and go deep and figure out why it triggered you, and get to the root of it and dig it out and examine it and take a look at it and determine whether or not it needs to stay, or if it needs to go, or if you can become friends with it, if you can use it that's going in a way that's going to improve your life in some sort of form or fashion. And yesterday, the sense of belonging is what pulled on my heartstring, and so afterwards I looked into it, and I wrote everything down so that I don't miss anything, and that kind of helps me. I journal a lot of all the things that happen, all the little signs that I see throughout the day, little sayings that kind of stick in my mind. It's like, oh, that's a really cool saying. It might be useful later. And if I'm triggered by anything. And yesterday it was about belonging, and so I looked into it, and I'm going to correlate this in such a way that you can use it in your personal life or in your professional life. So, most organizations talk about belonging. Most organizations talk about belonging like it is a culture initiative. It's a feeling, a value statement, surveys, workshops, language that's embedded into the organization. And none of these are actually what defines what belonging actually is in practice. The system actually does. Belonging is defined by what your system requires people to do in order to stay. Oh, pause. I'll be right back. Okay. In other words, what someone has to carry, tolerate, or perform in order to remain part of the organization. That is what organizations define as belonging. What someone has to carry, tolerate, or perform in order to remain part of the organization. That's the real definition of what belonging means in an organization, in the corporate world. Staying quiet about issues to avoid conflict. Overworking to keep things functioning. Constantly adapting to unclear expectations. Fixing problems that shouldn't even be theirs. Maintaining relationships at the expense of truth. So, in the corporate world, in organizations, belonging equals self-management plus overextension plus silence. That's not connection. So when an organization says we value belonging, what they're actually saying is we belong, or you belong here if you can endure and handle this without breaking anything. Because if you happen to rock the boat, you no longer belong here. It's conditioning versus messaging. Culture says you matter, but systems say, and here is what it's going to cost you. That in itself was just mind-blowing. So belonging isn't what we think it is. It's actually endurance. Can you endure the conditions in order to belong here? So what happens when people are forced to lean on something that looks stable, that says that you belong, but isn't designed to actually hold them? In operations, we see this all the time, and I went back on my memories of things that happened over the years, where I felt a sense of belonging. I really felt like I belonged. But now with this new definition, it really changed my perspective on it. So in operations, we see this all the time. Teams rely on high performers to keep everything moving. So those high performers belong because they endure. Leaders step in to absorb breakdowns instead of redesigning them. So leadership belongs because they overextend for their team. I contributed to my team, therefore I belong. Processes appear functional until pressure and volume hits. Teams belong because they learn how to compensate when a system can't, or how much instability they can absorb without breaking. You belong if you can endure this high volume of patience. We belong as a team here because we're contributing to this organization and we're going above and beyond. My son's here, hang on. All right, so it's a pattern. Belonging is earned by how much someone carries, and that is a huge distinction, huge perspective shift. All right, so because if your organization requires people to overfunction to maintain stability, you haven't built belonging in your organization. What you've built is dependence. Real belonging looks completely different. Real belonging looks like people can tell the truth without destabilizing the system. Ownership is clear, so that no one is silently compensating for what's missing. Processes carry the weight so that people don't have to. Stability is designed, not held together by effort. So I asked, with all of this, if belonging is endurance, is silently defined as endurance inside an organization, what exactly is belonging? Like, what am I missing? Make it clear to me. What am I not seeing? Belonging is the condition where you can exist, contribute, and tell the truth inside a system without having to distort yourself to stay. I'm going to read that again. Belonging is the condition where you can exist, contribute, and tell the truth inside a system without having to distort yourself to stay. That's just being you. Just being free inside a system without having to change anything, without having to stay silent, without having to overcompensate. It's just being. Belonging. Crazy concept, right? Crazy. Then I remember going back and like replaying things, and I thought, well, I belong here because I contribute. I contributed a whole lot, so I belong. And I discovered that there are two separate belongings. There is a healthy belonging, and there is a wound-based belonging. Let's start with the wound-based. Wound-based belonging says, I contribute, therefore I belong. You feel like you must contribute to justify your place. Rest feels uncomfortable or unsafe. That's unhealthy belonging. That's wounded belonging. Your belonging is tied to being useful or performance. If you stop, you question if you should still be able to be included. So let's look at healthy belonging. Healthy belonging says, I belong and I contribute. You contribute because it is natural to you. Your value is recognized with or without constant input. If you stop for a moment, you still belong. Contribution is an expression of belonging when it comes to healthy belonging. It is not a condition of belonging. So when systems are designed around output, they actually teach that belonging must be earned through contribution. when contribution becomes the cost of belonging, it stops being a gift and becomes a contract. And that was a full circle moment for me, because you are a gift to the world. You are a gift that holds gifts. And if you are using your gift to define your worth based on how much you contribute, that is not a healthy sense of belonging. Belonging is being able to just be without having to contribute something. So I don't know about you, but my sense of belonging, my definition of belonging, has been wrong my whole life. And I thought that I would share that. And I went into looking at what forms this sense of belonging. Where does it come from? Who defines it? How does it manifest? How does it initiate? You know what I'm saying? And some people, it starts in childhood. This was very eye-opening to me, because yesterday I felt the up and downs of wanting to belong somewhere without actually understanding what the actual definition of belonging is. And now I know it. And in order to belong somewhere, I need to be in a place where I get to just be. And if I feel that I get to just be, I already belong. Yeah, I like that environment. I like that environment. And I hope that you make that environment for yourself as well. And anybody in my environment, you get to just be. I like that. All right, something to think about, guys. You guys have a wonderful day.